If you're a citizen of the greater Cardano ecosystem, you probably already believe that privacy is an important fundamental pillar of where we want to go in crypto. And looking at the markets right now, privacy is certainly trending, but we do have to ask one question. Is privacy trending because people really believe that privacy is an important tenet of crypto, or are they just reacting to the market effects of cyclical demand for tax evasion? If the only trend you want to see is up and to the right, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Okay, so sorry for the delay, everybody. So sorry for the delay. The looks like the as you all probably already know, the difficulty ratcheted up on the scavenger mine. It looks like that was too much for my computer to handle, and it decided to go ahead and reboot right as we were about to begin. So that was a delay. My apologies, but we've got a lot to talk about tonight. There's actually a lot that's happened just today. So I think we've got plenty to discuss. Who's in here? J. Marie, Dinachu, Fly Over Me. Sorry about the football. Sorry about it. Danil, Bindocam, Neo Chad, at Cardano for the win. Adam Olson, who's trying Kava apparently. Bindocam says, let's go. Mission Zambia Stake Pool, thank you for joining. Otis Frichov, thank you for joining. Kristen Bowman, thank you for being here. Stein, let's go. Hill Dog, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Hola, Rulo. Mark Going. Tariq, hey, how's it going? Okay, so we've got a lot to talk about. As you would guess, if you've paid attention to the branding around midnight, you know that the big selling point, and one of the big selling points of midnight, is that you can have shielded and unshielded transactions, because privacy coins have been around for a long time in crypto. And what we know is that privacy coins tend to get in trouble with regulators if they're just completely shielded. Sort of the first conception of privacy coins in crypto involved, basically completely the idea of completely shielded transactions. And that didn't work out. Regulators weren't crazy about that. So then we had a later generation of sort of shielded and unshielded transactions within one blockchain. And that at least in going in that direction, you could at least claim it's possible to comply with what the regulators actually want. But right now, what we're seeing is something kind of interesting. Everyone is kind of getting behind privacy. Privacy is trending. And that's great for us in the greater Cardano ecosystem, because we're sort of in the process of launching Midnight. And Midnight is, at least branding itself as the latest generation of not only privacy coins, but also of crypto, Gen 4 crypto. Bindocam says, I think people are underestimating the value of selective disclosure. Yeah, I think so too. I think a lot of people don't understand what's possible here. But what people do understand is that they always want to get behind the latest trend in crypto. And privacy coins are trending in a very, very big way right now. So if we look at specifically what Zcash has been doing, what we see here is we see Zcash at pretty much, is it all-time highs aside from launch? Almost all-time highs since launch. They're looking at, if we look at the let's see, I had a 1-year chart here. Okay, the rebooting has kind of changed all the charts, but we're going to go back. We're going to go back here. We're going to change the time frame a little bit here. Okay, so this is what people are seeing. They're seeing 1,300%, 1,300% over the course of last year. They see this giant green hill. They see the charts climbing this giant green hill. They're like, what is that? All I know is I love the color green. Let me get on board. What is Zcash? So Zcash is not a new cryptocurrency ecosystem. Zcash goes all the way back to October 2016. It gets accused of the same thing as Cardano, and that's being a Dino coin. Zcash is a bit of a Dino coin. Zcash goes all the way back to 2016, and all of a sudden, Zcash is doing this. It's doing this. And if we look at the charts generally, what we see is a little bit of red, a little bit of green, but nothing like Zcash. Zcash on the 7 days, 68%. We don't see any numbers even approaching that anywhere in the top 10. And also, it's a bit of a surprise to see Zcash here at number 13. So if we look at other, this isn't just limited to Zcash though. So if we look at Monero, an even older coin, Monero goes all the way back to April of 2014. Monero is in the green in a big way. This will load for us. If we go to the 1 year, if we go to the 1 year, not quite as impressive as Zcash, but still, this is quite nice for the Monero people. And you can make the argument, I'm sure if you're in one of those ecosystems, you're going to make the argument, oh, it's because we're doing this. We've got this going on. We've got this partnership. We've got this technical innovation coming up. But there's another argument. Kyle says, exactly like ZEC, recent pump out of nowhere. Yep, exactly where I was going with that. At Cardano also says, peeps sick of paying tax, and I don't blame them. Also exactly where we're going with that. Kyle says, was in the 30s not long ago. Crazy. It will do better. So anyways, what we can see is this giant pump with these privacy coins, and the rest of crypto not really doing that. We don't see those kind of numbers. You know what I mean? If you're in the green, it's like if you're in the green on the 7 day, consider yourself lucky right now. But you don't see 7 day 68%. You don't see 1,300% over the course of 12 months. So what we can say is that there's a different possible narrative. If we go to the all-time chart, what we see, and this is not surprising, is that we have these big highs. Like back in 2021, they were at this value. That's May 2021. In December 2017, they were clear up here. They're almost at that same level right now. So obviously, these peaks are right after we saw peaks in Bitcoin, which leads people right now to make posts like this. Let's stop beating around the bush. Zcash is the easiest way to evade taxes, way easier than falsifying documents, Swiss bank accounts, shell corps, etc. Rich folks go to great lengths to achieve what can be achieved in a few clicks. This is not yet priced in. So we're seeing posts like this and posts like this. ZEC has historically topped 2 to 4 weeks after BTC top. Zcash is used for tax evasion, so of course it will start going up before the bear market or some major crash. And I'm not saying this is the right interpretation of what's going on with Zcash or privacy coins in general. I'm just saying there's 2 different ways people are looking at this. If you're a proponent of one of these ecosystems, you're probably calling it more like, hey, it's our latest technical innovations, it's our new partnership, it's something along those lines. But people who've been around privacy coins and known of privacy coins since over a decade ago, probably less likely to believe that what we're seeing is just, these ecosystems outperforming every other ecosystem because of their latest technological innovations. So let's see. Defo flag says, sorry if I missed it. Any midnight launch token price predictions? Don't worry. Yeah, I'm definitely not going to make any price predictions of any kind for midnight or any other token because, and I've said this a lot of times, many times on the channel over the years, but I don't really believe that anybody knows. I actually don't believe anybody knows. People can speculate, but it's not really worth anything because nobody really knows. Markets are too complicated. Nobody really knows. So here's another important take on this. So this post says, it seems a lot of Zcash folks misunderstood my point, and get defensive over something that actually deserves clarity, not denial. Here's the simple truth. A ZEC transaction with shielded inputs, even if the output is transparent to Binance or another centralized exchange, can still raise red flags. If the source of those coins can be verified, it may trigger compliance alerts. In plain terms, if you send ZEC from a transparent address to a centralized exchange, but those coins originally came from a shielded one earlier in the chain, the exchange's risk software can still detect that shielded ancestry and possibly flag, delay, or block the deposit. If the source of funds is unclear, especially for transactions over around 5,000 USD, it's likely to be flagged for review. And he's saying a contact of mine who works in a government financial regulatory department told me directly. So, there's an argument that even if people believe that you could use these privacy chains for tax evasion, maybe that's an unrealistic expectation. I'm not sure if it changes things though, if people believe that it works. Obviously, he's saying, hey, my friend in government says if you make a transaction like this over 5K, it's going to get flagged. So I think these privacy coins could still pump based on an expectation that you're more likely to evade detection. And this video obviously is not going to be, this stream is not going to be about teaching people how to engage in tax evasion. I've always paid all my taxes in crypto. I think everybody else should too, because it's illegal and you can basically turn yourself into a criminal. So I don't think you should turn yourself into a criminal to avoid taxes. I think you should pay your taxes. Just getting that out of the way. So we're not going in that direction where we talk about the mechanics of how to try to evade taxes here. But you have to ask the question, is Zcash pumping? Is Monero pumping? Because all of a sudden, everybody in crypto realized, hey, it's not just security, scaling, and decentralization. There's really a fourth leg called privacy. Did everybody all of a sudden realize that? And that's why Zcash is pumping? Is it because people like Vitamin are posting about privacy lately? Or is it just the same as every single cycle? Is it like every cycle, people make some profits, namely probably in Bitcoin right about now, if you're following, if this is the narrative you would embrace, are they just taking profits from Bitcoin and trying to figure out any way not to pay taxes on them? That is true for participants in crypto. Not all of them, but definitely some of them. Some percentage of participants in crypto are definitely trying to engage in tax evasion. How do we know that? We know it. It's been the case in crypto always. I remember one year early on, I can't remember what year it was, 2015, something like that. I had just paid my crypto taxes. I paid all of them, like always. Every single gain I paid taxes on. And there was a big article in a bunch of national newspapers that basically said the IRS had come out and announced that only like 500 people, that's 500, not 50,000, not 5 million, like 500 people, 500 people in the entire United States had paid taxes on crypto that year. And I feel like I almost knew more than 500 people who made money in crypto that year. So we know tax evasion does go on in crypto. Crypto people don't love to pay taxes. Would some of them see a Zcash and attempt to shield transactions, hoping they somehow are not going to have to pay taxes? Surely this happens. How much? That's up to speculation. But the opposite narrative would probably be a lot more convenient for us, right? Because we can say, hey, Midnight is the latest and greatest among privacy coins. And it had this really interesting launch that attempted to bring in all these people from these other ecosystems. And it had this giant airdrop to all of us as ADA holders. And then there was this proof of work phase that everybody's engaged in right now. So it had a really cool drop. It's the latest. It's supposed to be the latest technology in privacy coins. could we follow the same path that Zcash and Monero have recently been on? That's left to be seen, right? Because if this is just the same as before and those previous posters are correct, this is just people trying to do things with their gains, right? Like they do at the end of every cycle. If it's just that, then midnight, the timing of midnight may not be convenient for that. But if it is actually people embracing privacy, if everybody in crypto finally understands the value of privacy, then maybe midnight's timing is perfect. But on the topic of the midnight drop, we also saw this on Thursday. I noticed this on Friday. This post came out on Thursday, I believe. So Patty and Paul did something that I think is amazing. Everybody who was sort of involved in the scavenger mine and wasn't doing any kind of bot mining, wasn't involved in API mining, felt like they were at a disadvantage. You might have had a couple browsers running on a couple computers, couple devices, and you probably felt like, probably rightly so, and we know for a fact, rightly so, you were not mining as much as a lot of people engaging in API mining, bot mining, all these much more scaled, almost industrial versions of mining. So, anyways, this post came out. Patty and Paul had been working on this for some time, and they just open sourced it. They were like, here you go. Everybody's complaining about the bot miners. How about if everybody can become a bot miner? So this was made available. You could just download this and begin bot mining. How many people in the comments actually downloaded this and have been using it? Crunchy Cat says, me and Monica were listening to your alien rumor rundowns a few hours ago. Great. We're going to do more of those. We're definitely going to do more of those. What's up, James? Good to see you. Default flag. Yep. Yep. They've got to answer where it went and or where it came from. Yep, they do. Yep. If it gets flagged, you do. I can't even says the tea leaves say the bear market is here. Could be. I don't know. Nobody really knows. Adam Olson is pointing out that this is sort of along the same lines as the layerverse idea, BTC value layer, Cardano compute layer, midnight privacy layer. Yep. I think this is sort of the idea of the layerverse all along. I can't even, says I'm not round tripping this one, rather leave early than keep trying to wait for it to go much higher. I went through that back when we hit over 2. Yep, definitely a lot of us round tripped it that last cycle. BindoCam says the pure privacy thing only works if you don't transact in anything else. It can't touch the trad system. Yeah, I mean, that's an exit problem for a lot of people. Unless you're selling your Zcash directly to somebody else, if you use, some kind of an off ramp, if you're going to exit into fiat at some point, it's a problem. There's some things. There's some things people engage in that we won't explore in this video, but obviously there's some things that people think are advantageous to them. Fly Over Me says it's because of midnight that we're even having this discussion. Yeah, I mean, that's another interpretation. You could say, hey, maybe Zcash and Monero are pumping because of midnight. Surely, the buzz around midnight is contributing to that for sure. Can we say that's 100% of why they're pumping? Maybe not, because they've pumped like every cycle when the Bitcoin people thought, the jig was up. Default flag says we all know a ton of people not paying taxes, not to get political, but if people don't think if people don't think they're going to get caught in the US and now government on it, then not paying for a year. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, the IRS is, this is what they like to do. They like to catch people, not paying their taxes. So this is what they like. Yeah. Okay. Default flag. I can't tell what you're saying. Okay, BindoCam says browser only. Cardano says, nope, my PC still can't cope. Actually using NuFi wallet interface. Yeah, I know a bunch of people are using NuFi wallet for their mining. Rulo is single browser mining. Okay. Yep, another Mark Going is also using NuFi. Oh yeah, so okay, so maybe not as many people as I thought are using this solution. I think a lot of people are though, based on the comments. I think a lot of people in general are downloading Patty and Paul's sort of mining solution. I think they're legends for doing it, right? I mean, they did this knowing that a ton of people would download it. And I mean, 31,000 people saw that post, 235 people liked it. So, I mean, there's some downloading going on there for sure, probably a ton. And the coolest thing is they right in the GitHub, if you go to the GitHub, so they have a small developer fee apparently that goes to them, every once in a while. Every once in a while, you mine a solution and they get a small developer fee. And they included some functionality to turn that off. If you don't want to pay them at all for this thing they built and open source to everybody, you can turn it off, which I don't think anybody should do. If anybody downloads this and uses it, you should definitely give Patty and Paul the developer fee on that. Okay. Daniil said, yep, robots. Yep. Benochem says one of the minor devs, not Fetcher, says he has 1,000 workers reporting. Oh yeah, I mean if anybody was mining today, the mining today was pretty difficult. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's down. We saw a lot of. I saw reports it was down to like what was it, 1.45 night per solution. Pretty tough, even with the increase that Midnight announced the other day. They're going to give us all. They increased it from what was it, 600 and something million night that are going to be awarded during this period to a billion. That's a pretty big increase, but still, that only brings it from like 1.45 night per solution to 2 point something per solution. So it's pretty low. It's getting pretty low now. I don't really blame people who are like, hey, I've mined for the first 11 days of the 21. That's, more than half the time. I've made my contribution. I'm done now. I kind of sympathize with those people right now. The name's Midnight Dust Scavenger Glacier. Seriously, I can't wait to see what comes of this. FOMO Midnight. Yeah, the names are very colorful. In the greater Cardano ecosystem, I think we've definitely had our share of colorful names. I like it for sure. Mission Zambia says single browser on 2 laptops. Yeah, this is medium difficulty. Hard difficulty, yeah, the single browser mining is gonna be something. Most of them, Benochem says most of them are going to be looking to dump anyway. I'm just stashing some cash on the side to snip it up when it looks juicy enough. Yeah, that's definitely one strategy. You could definitely say like, hey, I'm just gonna wait until after launch and then buy after launch. Mark Going says that, yeah, I was trying to get my buddy to work with me Friday and get set up on it with Docker and everything, but we didn't get a chance to do it. Think they're trying to prove mining isn't a viable solution. No, I think this is kind of like part of the Minotaur thing. I think Charles definitely likes having multiple proofs of blank, because a lot of Bitcoin maximalists try to make the discussion they try to frame the discussion as proof of work versus proof of stake. But actually, that's just how we pick the validator for a particular block or slot. That's not even the consensus mechanism. It's just how we pick the leader for that block or slot. It's just which validator's turn is it? It's not even the consensus mechanism. So I think, Charles makes a good point on that. And one way to show that is by incorporating proof of work here. So I think it's more about that myself. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some selling. Anytime a new coin launches, there's some selling for sure. Oh, Mark says, by the way, my 2018 PC can no longer mine. Yeah, I mean, my devices are much newer than that, and they're not mining as fast as day one, that's for sure. Okay, so here's some more Cardano news, and we're going to get to, there was really big news out of Washington today We're going to get to that. And that's probably the biggest news of this weekend by far. But we're going to get to it. But first, we're going to cover some important Cardano news. So you remember there was the governance action that basically said, hey, we're going to pay the constitutional committee members. So it's very obviously looking like that's not going to pass. Probably not going to pass. So we saw this today. Cardano Atlantic Council, which is one of the seats on the Constitutional Committee. If you're not aware, some of the seats are multiple people. Some of them are like, 5, 7 people, however many people they have in their little council. They have one seat, but they kind of act as, one member of the Constitutional Committee. They had this to say: the current Constitutional Committee compensation governance proposal is unlikely to pass based on the vote tally and rationales. True. Accordingly, Cardano Atlantic will retire our Constitutional Committee keys on November 25th, following the epic transition to allow active proposals to ratify or expire. We are proud to have maintained a 100% voting participation record, a core goal for us. We will not participate in any further proposals. It appears the DRep community lacks appetite to compensate Constitutional Committee members. Our decision is not a negotiation tactic or plea for yes votes. It simply reflects a misalignment of expectations. This is an honorable way for them to paint this, I think. It's from the outset, we were transparent that pursuing compensation is part of our criteria. I didn't know that. I didn't know any of the Constitutional Committee members, were outspoken about pursuing compensation. But if they say it, I believe them. I'm sure they were if they say it. But I actually didn't know this. I guess I wasn't paying enough attention to realize this, that they were gonna quit if they didn't get paid. They say, with this, our service to the Constitutional Committee concludes. We wish the community success in electing new members or consortia to carry the governance journey forward. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. And I get where they're coming from, right? It's like a lot of the, all of these people, have spent a lot of time on Cardano, and they took this role. If they took this role thinking they were going to get paid, and it is obviously not going to happen, I get why they would not want to do it. If they think they have better things to do with their time, or it's just too taxing, they don't have the bandwidth for it, whatever it is, it's honorable that they say, hey, basically, we were transparent. We wanted to get paid. We're not getting paid, so we're not going to do it anymore. It is their time, and they get to do with it what they want. So, to me, though, it was very obvious that proposal, as soon as I saw the proposal, I knew it was not going to be successful, because we've previously had proposals about DReps getting paid, and that wasn't successful. So, my immediate viewpoint was, if the DReps aren't willing to pay themselves at this point, there's no way they're going to be willing to pay the Constitutional Committee. So, I'm sure at some point, it seems like it's impossible to have any kind of a legislative chamber of a government that doesn't eventually pay itself. It's like the people passing the laws are always going to pay themselves. So it's going to happen. But, obviously I'm sort of in the fiscal restraint camp. I'm trying to get us to spend less. So, I'm not exactly crying about this, and I definitely voted no. I think it's a little bit too early for everybody to start getting paid, and there were questions about the amount, all those kind of things. But anyways, so it looks like they're carrying out apparently what they said at the beginning. They wanted to get paid. They're not getting paid, so they're out. We also have this going on. This is kind of interesting. So Charles announced, hey, we're going to have some midnight ambassadors. And then he came back with this. For midnight ambassadors, I'm thinking they should be paid in night and must also use 20% of their, he means remuneration on midnight DeFi. What do you think? So some people were like all about it. Some people came back and they were like, hey, I think economic freedom, probably should rule the day here. If you're going to pay people to do something, just pay them. Don't pay them and then tell them, oh, but really you have to take X% of what I pay you and do this with it. Granted, it's not like the most terrible thing in the world. If let's say you're somebody who's going to rely on the money you're getting paid as a midnight ambassador, it's not the most terrible thing in the world to, be forced to put 1/5 of your money into something that theoretically is going to yield, but also at the same time, if you really need that money in order to devote the time to being a midnight ambassador, whatever that entails, if you really need that money in order to be able to put aside that time to do it, it does kind of suck if you're like, okay, but I have to put 20% of it at risk, So I get where both sides are coming from on that. Okay. I can't even says, but the more difficult it gets, don't you think it gets less accessible, so less decentralized? Definitely. It's definitely way less decentralized now. Like so I think what's going on with this, so for anybody who's confused, this is a reference to the increased difficulty in the mining in the scavenger mine. So I think part of the thing is that the metric that is probably going to be part of the PR around the event, one of the bigger metrics is going to be the number of wallets that participated, because we don't really have proof of humans. So we don't know how many wallets each human has. We can't really put a finger on number of humans. So the metric that's probably going to get bandied about is number of wallets. And if one person has 2,000 wallets, it just pumps up that metric. So there's kind of a little bit of a malincentive for if you want to put up good numbers for this event, if you're midnight running this and you want to put up good numbers, like number of wallets is probably going to be the number that's going to get bandied about. So even if this reduces decentralization in terms of humans, allowing one person to run 2,000 wallets just pumps up that other figure. So that'd be like the skeptical, half glass full kind of interpretation of that. But also, we don't have retinal scans in the scavenger mine, so they can't really do the proof of human thing. But I agree with you. It's kind of logical to me at this point that the decentralization of the distribution of those tokens that are being mined, those night tokens, is less now than it was on day one for sure. DNOT use is true. I'm also thinking I'll stop mining it at some point. Not worth overheating my PC and my bills for a speck of the midnight. I already have been allocated in the redemption period. This is exactly how I feel. I may stop mining, or I may just mine when, my computer is idle or something. But I think the 24-hour a day mining is, it's like a lot of people are like, I'm mining for the culture, which is a very nice sentiment. I think it's cool that people say that. They're just trying to support the ecosystem, which I think is awesome. But at a certain point, if you're just mining a couple night and you've already been allocated a very, very healthy amount, because we did get a lot as ADA holders, I think it's getting pretty close to the point where I'll stop mining 24 hours a day. So Default Flag says, thoughts on Charles's videos recently? Feels like backing Midnight hardcore as the next tech. Of course, Cardano the layer, but Midnight outperformed Cardano. What do you think? Like Cardano is a mature ecosystem. So when you talk about outperformance, like there's coins right now that are like the number 2,000 coin, and it might outperform all of the top 50 on any given day just because it's the one in the 2000s that does great that day. But it might be a flash in the pan that lasts for like 3 days. You know what I mean? So there's kind of this spectrum. It's like, newer coins like that, really small cap coins, obviously they can outperform anything because it takes much less money flowing into that ecosystem for the price to go wild. And, there's a ton of manipulation. So, it's like, I don't even really think about crypto ecosystems in terms of, performance over any kind of short timeline. I sort of find myself thinking, what's going to be around in 2030, 2035? What ecosystems are still going to be relevant then? Because if you look back, man, when I got into crypto, a lot of the ecosystems that got a huge amount of press and air quotes outperformed are no longer even relevant. Like I never even hear the names anymore. So, a lot of ecosystems people would talk to me about in person. In person, people would talk to me about these ecosystems because they were so passionate about them. And those same people, they're not talking about those same ecosystems. So Mission Zambia says, I think DReps need compensation more than constitutional committee. The reviewing process DReps have to do is labor intensive and requires time and effort. Yeah, people, there were actually like polls today about, which job is harder. They're different jobs. So one is more, and I don't mean this I don't mean this in a pejorative way at all. But one of those two things is a little bit more ministerial. Um, so it's a little more administrative. It's sort of like a technical analysis. Like, okay, here's what the Constitution requires. Does this violate the Constitution in any way? It's objective. It's an objective decision, right? And you get into a lot of gray areas anytime you're doing this is basically legal analysis. Anytime you're doing that kind of legal analysis, there's a lot of gray areas, but it's supposed to be the goal is for it to be an objective analysis of constitutionality, right? What the DReps do is very different. The DReps are making policy. It's like, do we want to go in this direction or this direction? It's not objective. It's not black and white. It's like there's not even really an objective goal. It's just sort of like, we've got all these DReps and they represent a huge number of people. And what do we think? What do we think is the right direction to go in? And mainly that manifests in the form of, where should we put money? What's going to be healthiest for the ecosystem? Where should we put this money? So that's the way it manifests mainly. And it's not ministerial. It's not administrative. It's just, policy making. So they're very different jobs for sure. I can't even says, if my rig can't solve the solution, the cost is not worth it. Also, we are hoping it's worth something. Just FOMOing after my laptop can't mine, I'm out. Yeah, I mean, I've been jokingly calling it, early Bitcoin miner LARPing. I mean, the for sure value is just the fun. And so if it stopped being fun, if the LARPing aspect is no longer fun, then I think a lot of people are going to stop doing it, because we don't know. I mean, you make a very good point. We have no idea how much Night is going to be worth. I certainly don't. And honestly, neither does anybody else. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for pointing that out. Adam even knows the exact episode number. It was episode number 177. This episode right here is, what is it? 733. 177 was Cardano and the Layerverse. And this is exactly what we're talking about. Malo Blesov. Thank you. Blesev. Thank you for joining. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a side effect of it, but I think the Minotaur aspect of it is really what Charles was going for. I think he was trying to have like the fairest launch ever. And I mean, maybe you could say like, okay, they could have done certain things, like given more to the community, less to the foundation, because certainly they didn't hit that same insider, distribution that Cardano did. Cardano had a very low insider distribution. This is larger than that, But I think as far as like the method of distribution, it's obvious they're going for decentralization. It's like all these different ecosystems got allocations. And then, although ADA got a great allocation, the greatest allocation, the best allocation. And then it's like you have proof of work, so that anybody with a laptop, it's like, you got a laptop, you can have some of this, you can get in on this distribution. Like pretty much anybody with any kind of recent laptop could have gotten some Night on day one. So, I think that's what they're going for, really. I'm sure if stress testing of Hydra happens because of this, that's kind of, probably a welcome side effect. I don't know about that. I mean, I'd love it. I'd love it if it was, if it had a huge positive economic effect on all of us. But I also didn't hear that. Daniil says he didn't hear it. Welcome to the Night Shift. It's kind of funny because Night Shift is a pretty big UAP podcast. It's a good one too. I've said this before. It's pretty good one. Fly Over Me says I stopped. Okay, so Fly Over Me stopped mining. Bindo Cam says I really thought robbery. We're going to talk about the robbery forest later. Patrick, hey, welcome back. Good to see you. Do you feel the Constitutional Committee eventually be ran by AI in the future? It's really a lawyerly task. It's a lawyerly task, and AI is good at that kind of stuff. So I think we'll see a lot of people using AI in the interim. We'll see a lot of people using AI to explain their vote on the Constitutional Committee. So And of course, yeah, people were referencing this. Charles also said, I'd like to start a podcast called The Night Shift. It will be all about midnight and release weekly. Who would like to host? A few people mentioned me in the comments, which I appreciate very much. Thank you so much for that, for everybody who said that. The one thing I would say is that probably, I'm guessing Charles is going to want this to be a podcast that's on like YouTube and everywhere else. And obviously the intent is to have guests, if it's to be a normal podcast. So you probably need somebody who has a face. some Cardano, some Cardano person who has a face, who's good at podcasting, is probably better than someone who is faceless. So I'm probably out of the running for that, because I think they're probably counting on somebody who has a face. Also, I kind of love the independence thing. I kind of love just being able to speak freely and not obviously, whoever does this podcast is, there's going to be, they will not have complete, I mean, I'm sure there will be, proclamations that they will have complete independence, but if you're doing the official Midnight Network podcast, you're not as independent as like I am right now. So I don't think Charles, who would like to see Charles host the Midnight Special? Yeah, I don't think Charles has the bandwidth to do it. That dude must be very, very busy. Thomas Kirkpatrick, hello. Cardano says, I don't know. Midnight is all about privacy, no face. Yeah, that's true. But I'll bet, I kind of think for this, it needs to be somebody with a face so they can do the whole, like Rogan 2 cameras and 3 camera thing, show the guest, show the host, show them both, that kind of thing. I think you kind of need that dynamic to have like a full high production podcast these days. It'd be hard to do it with one person just being like a logo, a little PFP of the ADA symbol, that kind of thing. So here's the big news out of Washington, though. And this is pretty huge. This is actually bigger than anything we've talked about tonight and probably this week. So earlier this evening, the Senate had reached a bipartisan deal to extend government funding in a major sign the shutdown is poised to end. So this is obviously very good. You could make arguments to the contrary, of course, as with all things, sort of, macro governance related, but this would seem to be good for crypto. We basically haven't even had the altcoin cycle yet. It basically hasn't happened. And what we don't know at this point is it going to happen at all? Is it going to just stretch out into next year, or did we just get skipped? Is it apocalypse and we just got skipped for the altcoin cycle? But one thing, okay, I got to put, Adam says, I was skiing last week and 37 people asked me if I was AOS. That would be fantastic. If that many people at a ski resort knew about AOS, that'd be fantastic. Certainly I don't think any of us in crypto, in an altcoin ecosystem like Cardano, will object to a change from the status quo. And this is definitely a big change in the status quo. So it was looking like maybe we're going to get a vote tonight, and then news had come out that a deal had been struck, and then Schumer walked out of the room, and Schumer said he was going to vote no. So it was obvious it wasn't a deal, that was going to make everybody on both sides of the aisle happy. But it sounded like enough people on the left side of the aisle had agreed that they were going to hit their 60 member threshold. And it looks like that's what's happened. So this is still early, but reports are coming out that it was the following people left of the aisle: Shaheen, Rosen, King, Kane, Hassan, Fetterman, Durbin, Cortez, Masto. And some of these are no surprise. Fetterman was like the first on my list to think he would kind of cross the aisle on this. But it looks like they did make a deal. And I guess the deal is that there would be a follow-on vote in December on the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. Obviously, the people on the left side of the aisle want to continue the health insurance regime that's tied up in the Affordable Care Act. And the people on the right of the aisle, not crazy about that. But the deal is they're going to have another vote in December to address that issue. And in the meantime, they'll have this temporary funding to reopen the government until something like January. So, of course, if anybody had any plans of flying anywhere over Thanksgiving, this is important because if everybody who flies, I think right around Thanksgiving is like the busiest flight day of the year. And there would have been a lot of very angry voters. So it was obvious that this was going to get tied up before then. And it looks like the way it happened was a temporary vote to kind of fund things, get them to January, and then, basically they can fight some more. Binocam says if both sides are mad and it still happens, it's probably a good compromise. Well put. Well put. Most compromises on very contentious, very contentious issues are like that in my experience. So very well put. Very well put. Another interesting thing out of Washington today, and it's definitely great timing. I mean, tomorrow people are going to go nuts when they hear that the government's probably going to reopen. An actual vote on that, might happen later this week, but looking like the government's going to reopen. And Trump saying things like this. Trump saying, things like all these businesses are coming to the US just because of the tariffs. And there's going to be an injection of $20 trillion into the US economy by the end of the year because of all these businesses coming here because of the tariffs and investing in the US because they need to avoid the tariffs, basically. So $20 trillion, huge. Not trying to do a Trump impression there, but the only suitable word is huge. This is, gigantic. Whether or not this is something that actually happens or this is just hyperbole, we don't know. But definitely, it almost seems like Trump knew a deal was going to be struck today, or he had some intuition, and he's like, why don't we just hit him with all the good news at once? Try to get some good vibes going into the holiday season here. We're now at November 9th. Let's get this thing rolling. He sort of spent all year, kind of dealing with international issues related to the global economic relations of the US. He did his Asia tour. He's been flying all over. He was dealing with, all of the issues in the Middle East, dealing with Ukraine. That's been all of 2025 so far. Trying to broker a peace deal in Ukraine, trying to broker a peace deal in the Middle East, brokering, at least a temporary peace deal between Thailand and Cambodia. It's all been international stuff. But midterms are coming in November. Midterms are going to happen in November no matter what. So I think what a lot of people are predicting, what I think is going to happen is we're going to see nothing but focus on the domestic economy in between now and next November. And because so much of this administration's energy in 2025 was on the international relations, military, political, and economic of the U.S., external relations, everything was, especially around military conflicts, because so much energy was put in that in 2025. I think they're going to go super hard on domestic economic policy and try to get things looking real good well before those November midterms, because especially after the votes last week, I think they're going to be real scared and working real hard to try to make things look really good before November. So I think we're going to see a lot of things. I think we're going to see a lot of things in between now and November. Whether they work or not, I don't know. Whether 20 trillion is a pipe dream that never, that's like far in excess of the reality, who knows? But we're going to find out. I think it's going to be interesting throughout, the rest of 2025 and 2026. Obviously, with the holidays, things kind of slow down these last 2 months of 2025. But I think especially once we hit January 2026, you're going to see a lot of focused energy out of this administration on on domestic economic policy. Whether you hate that or like it, I think that's what's going to happen. So we also saw this. People that are against tariffs are fools. We are now the richest, most respected country in the world with almost no inflation and a record stock market price. 401ks are highest ever. We are taking in trillions of dollars and we'll soon begin paying down our enormous debt, 37 trillion. Record investment in the USA, plants and factories going up all over the place, a dividend of at least 2,000 a person, not including high income people, will be paid to everyone. So this is, you know, more of the same, right? This to me is like the 20 trillion. He's saying a dividend of 2,000 a person. This is kind of like the 20 trillion though. Do we actually see this? Are we talking about checks? Are we talking about stimmy? Are we talking about something else? And you know, crypto got excited when they saw this. A lot of posts like this. We are so back. A lot of excitement. Let's go. It's The Rock. Let's go. So very, very excited. Many posts like this. But then there's always a but then, right? We can never in crypto, we can never just catch a clean break. It seems like we can never catch a clean break. We always get the but, and it's coming. Flying Hambone says payments would definitely start the next bull market. Yeah, some 2K stimmy checks would people debate how much of that went into things like crypto. There's definitely various opinions on that, but it definitely seemed contemporaneous with good times in crypto. I'll say that. So of course, here's the but part though. Scott Bessent went on a few shows and said the $2,000 dividend could come in a lot of forms. And he basically said it could be no tax on tips. It could be no tax on Social Security, things like that. So not exactly what we want to hear. And I think a lot of people also missed Trump saying in his post that it will not include high income people. So the first question you should ask is, if you're in crypto especially, what is a high income person? Are we talking last year's tax returns? Are we talking assets? What is a high income person here? So a lot of people could be excluded. It's not like the stimmy checks we got during in COVID when there was just stimulus flying everywhere. And we went from, what was it, like a 15 trillion M2 to a 20 trillion M2, eventually like 21 or 22 trillion. We're definitely not talking about that kind of thing, according to Scott Bessent here, which is unfortunate. I like that he's the voice of reason. I like that Scott Bessent is the voice of reason, and he doesn't, he walks it back pretty quick. Scott Bessent definitely jumps on these, morning finance shows and walks these back pretty quickly. And I like that he does that so that we don't, all celebrate for like a week only to find out later that, it's not at all what we thought it was. But it'd be better if it was just like, for crypto, it'd be better if it was just like stimmy checks all around, of course. So this is not really crypto related, but I want to point this out because I think this is important. So a lot of times Central Asia definitely gets neglected in terms of US policy. But here, the White House is saying that Trump met with the heads of state. It looks like the heads of state. He doesn't really. He says the presidents, so probably various titles. But the looks like heads of state of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan. So this is good. Obviously, these nation states were all part of the Soviet sphere during the Cold War, but they have not received the attention in American foreign policy that, say, Eastern Europe has, for a lot of reasons, NATO, all those kinds of things. But I think it's time to bring Central Asia into the, a more cooperative, open relationship with the West, for sure, because there's a lot going on in Central Asia. And probably 90% of people in the West who don't have some connection to this area can't even identify which countries are which in this region of the world, because there's just so little mind space in the West, I think, for Central Asia. And just like so little interaction. But I think it's time for the West to have a lot more interaction with Central Asia, because there's a lot going on there. So anyways, not crypto related, but I was glad to see it. This is crypto related and something we talk about a lot. Even the Financial Times is starting to realize what the robbery forest is. So the Financial Times has this whole article. I can't show it to you because of the paywall, but basically the headline says it all. Demand for secure crypto devices soars as hacks hit record. So even very mainstream outlets, are realizing you got to have a hardware wallet. See, they don't even use the phrase hardware wallet in their title because they know the people reading this type of article don't even know what that is. They say secure crypto devices because their readers don't even know what hardware wallets are. But even they are starting to talk about the robbery forest. This is a huge, deficit for the EVM world and the Solana VM world. And I'm not sure, this is a huge hole they've dug for themselves. And I'm not sure if they ever really dig themselves out of it, but huge hole for sure. Mike M says that 20 trillion does not include the financial institutions buying crypto from exchanges with ETFs flowing in soon. That's for sure. We've that's all still supposed to happen, and it should have already happened, except for the government shutdowns. So a lot of things come with this government shutdown. A lot of people are pointing out we don't know how much money printing, how much injection of liquidity could have happened in the last, what's it been, 40 days, the longest government shutdown ever. We don't know how much money printing would have happened in those 40 days if the government had been open. Obviously, like the Treasury Department needs to be functioning in order for a lot of this money printing to happen. The Fed has its own stuff going on that it can do. They have many sort of stealthy ways of printing money. We've talked about a lot of them on this channel, but a lot of it can't really happen if the government is shut down. Now that the government opens, we've got things like the crypto ETFs, that can happen now that the government is open now. We've got things like money printing that can happen now the government's open. On top of that, we've got Trump talking about something that sounds a lot like Stimmy, and we've got his 20 trillion. So a lot of big things happening. Is it enough? Is it enough to save the last 2 months of year 4 of the supposed 4-year cycle? I don't know about that. We're going to see for sure, but I don't know. It's kind of feeling like we're going to be talking a lot about 2026. BindoCam, there it is. And even then with robbery forest, you sign the wrong contract and you get robbed years later. Yep, that is for sure. Robbery forest is, it's full of innovative robbers. They're going to figure out ways to rob you. A large wealth transfer to ADA holders for midnight. Watch Charles' video from 11/1/25. He dropped some Easter eggs. Okay, I'll check that out. I'm not sure if I watched that one. I probably did. Maybe I just missed this part. But yeah, I mean, the allocations we got in the Glacier drop are very significant, much more than other ecosystems got, us as ADA holders, which I appreciate very much. But the part we don't know is how much Night tokens will actually be worth. So that's the big question mark. And that I don't know. Unfortunately, people who know nothing about hardware wallets won't know the difference between UTXO, account, ledger, all crypto bad. 100%. Like, the vast majority of people outside of crypto don't even understand what a blockchain is. They don't understand how you get robbed in the blockchain. They don't know what's going on at all. They will probably never really understand what hardware wallets are, even one day if they're using them. So yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem with crypto is the technical information is so far beyond what a normal person will ever even want to understand. So we'll see. Oh my God, nightmare. I can't even. Stimmy might be in World Liberty Coin. Oh my God. Now you're talking about some nightmare scenarios. So people might hate that I say that, but this is like nightmare. That would be the PR on that would not be good. I can't even says Night will not be worth anything without ADA. That's the clues. Wise old Charles dropped. Yeah, I mean Night rides on ADA rails, so definitely Cardano cannot go away. The night token needs Cardano to exist. That's for sure. Definitely does. So I mean, this is a pretty big news night. This is not a small news weekend. This is all pretty big stuff. I mean, it's sort of the perfect setup, right? Like I'm always very agnostic about where I think the market's going to go, because the crypto market will surprise you every single time. Like, you're going to get surprised by the crypto market. If you are at all confident about where things are going, you're going to get surprised in crypto, because the truth is nobody knows where things are going. But this is like this fantastic setup, right? It's like we've just gone through the longest government shutdown in history. What was it, 40 days or something like that? And now it's looking like the government is going to open back up. You've got Trump talking about an injection of 20 trillion. 20 trillion. That's gigantic. You've got the possibility of a lot of these tariff negotiations being wrapped up, which created a lot of uncertainty over, the whole economy and all markets, basically. You've got the possibility of that being wrapped up. Although I think people might be underestimating how much negotiating might still be left between the US and China. Although I think we got about the best we could. So you've got the 20 trillion. Then you've got Trump talking about stimulus of 2,000 per person. Then you've got, in terms of midnight, you've got like the previous relevant privacy coins going crazy, going insane. Just these vertical green walls for Zcash going so crazy. It's like, it is kind of the perfect setup. Like, I actually felt bad for Charles and IOG and Midnight when they, had waited all this time, launching Midnight in sort of Q4 of year 4 of the cycle, exactly when you would launch it. If you knew anything about the previous cycles, exactly when you'd want to launch a new network. And then we get the first, like Q4 year 4 ever, where just like nothing happens. I actually felt terrible for Charles and IOG and Midnight on that. But now things are looking up a little bit. So things might be improving for us here, guys. Okay, so it's been a huge news weekend. Anything else? Anybody noticed over the weekend or thinks we should discuss? These videos are kind of interesting. So obviously in Asia, it's already Monday morning. We're approaching Monday morning in parts of Europe. In the Western Hemisphere, it's still Sunday night. So it's kind of the launching point for the rest of the week. It's kind of nice to observe when we have a real slow week. You're kind of, about this time, when you have a real slow weekend, you're kind of hoping that things pick up during the week. We get some good news in crypto. But this week, it's all kind of front loaded. We got all this good news today, which people are going to go crazy about when they wake up and start seeing. So this is kind of a front loaded week for us. BindoChem says, well, you start thinking about people like the Chainlink guys starting to talk about privacy being the final unlock. That can be coincidence after Charles complaining about their integration woes. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some intellectual energy building. We'll call it intellectual momentum building around privacy. Like, people are talking more about it. Even though it's been this topic that's been around. I mean, like I said, Monero launched in April 2014. It's been around over a decade. We've had privacy advocates and privacy projects in crypto for a long time, but now people are getting serious about it. And there's definitely, even though part of it might just be sort of the end of cycle, use of privacy coins, whether wrongly or rightly, effectively or not effectively, for, whatever the goals of those people are, that's going on. But there's also a lot of sort of, intellectual momentum around the privacy thing right now. I can't even says to transact midnight for the privacy, you will still need to transact with Cardano and your bridge coin, Solana, whatever. And guess who earns ADA holders? Yeah, I mean, obviously there are, it's a partner chain of Cardano, and all the things that go along with partner chains, are architected to be good for Cardano. They're meant to They're meant to benefit each other, not be a detriment to each other. So hopefully that's what happens, but we won't really know until it gets built out. I mean, people are going to build a lot of things, maybe even things we can't predict right now. So how they work together is going to be interesting, but it's still a market, so things are unpredictable. Hellfire Burner says one dev to another on Ethereum. Want to collaborate on a DAO? Yeah, that was yeah, that discussion was the genesis of the DAO. So for people who don't know, there was something called the DAO, and it was like basically the original DAO that received a lot of mainstream attention, at least. And the DAO was launched, and it was immediately exploited. It was immediately hacked with a reentrancy hack, and so many people lost so much money that the people around Ethereum who are kind of controlling, I'll just use the word controlling, the people controlling Ethereum actually got scared that, and you can debate, historically, you can debate whether what I'm saying is accurate or not, but it seemed apparent to me that the people controlling Ethereum got scared that people might actually get in trouble with the SEC, maybe even go to jail, that kind of thing. There might be big, big problems like that if this wasn't remedied. So they rolled back the chain to before the exploit, and they broke the immutability of Ethereum, which led to Ethereum Classic being a thing. So yeah, that was very interesting jumping off point. Whatever was said, probably something along these lines was said that kicked off a whole thing that kind of changed crypto forever. That was like a big, really important hack that sort of changed the course of things. Um, I can't even says going back to what I thought, Midnight Scavenger Hunt proves we don't need proof of work, but if you're a Cardano believer, get something while supporting the efforts. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's like a really I keep jokingly calling it, LARPing, like Bitcoin miner LARPing. But really what it is us doing an experiment in Minotaur. It's really a Minotaur experiment, which is good for us to do. Like Minotaur is this thing, like, you hear about it at first. It's like, hey, you could just combine proof of work and proof of stake and proof of compute, or proof of, whatever. There's many proofs of blank that we have in crypto. You could, I guess, proof of compute is really kind of proof of work. So that's a bad example, but you've got many proofs of blank, and combining them is kind of a cool idea. And right now we're doing a real experiment in that. So I think that part of it's really cool. Okay. Adam Olson. Consult your doctor before drinking kava, but if your doctor says it's okay, one thing I would say is it works a lot better if you haven't eaten for a couple hours when you drink the kava. And I would also say there's certain substances, if you consumed them too much in your life, then kava seems to not work. It seems to be not effective. I've tested this on many people, and there are certain substances you could have recreated with, throughout your life. And if you did that, then kava is very, very ineffective. So that's what I would say about those two things. Okay. So I think we've covered, this was a big news weekend. I think we've covered all the news, but I hope this was good news for everybody. I hope this gives everybody, we've had a tough year. We've had a really tough year. I know everybody in crypto already knows that. You don't need to be told what a tough year for crypto this was, but it was a tough year. We've had a tough year in crypto. So, I like to think maybe we deserve a good couple of months to finish things out, and I don't know. I don't know if our 4-year cycle became a 5-year cycle this time, or if we just got passed up here and, that's all she wrote. I don't know what's going on. I don't really think anybody else, I don't think anybody else knows, which is the M word, which is the M word. But yeah, I don't know if anybody else, really knows what's going to happen either. But I hope we get a good couple of months. BindoCamp says, hopefully no more black swans, knocking a hole in my desk. Not you. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. But I hope this is a good glimmer of hope for everybody. I hope this is a glimmer of hope. We might have a good 2 months, but I hope November so far has been treating everybody right. I hope you had a nice weekend, and fingers crossed for a great week. Thank you for joining tonight, and I'll talk to everybody soon.